Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, your host, and today I'm here with Stephanie Hayes. On my podcast, we talk a lot about how to grow your business. We talk about how to come up with an idea, but today we're going to talk about exiting your business. And so we talk about, well, you might not even have a business yet, or you just started. Why do we need to talk about exiting? So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Stephanie. And Stephanie, why don't you introduce yourself and then answer that question?
Why? Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Hi. I am Stephanie Hayes. I am a business strategist and I work with small business owners who are looking ahead, right? And they are wondering, what am I going to do from here? I've been in my business 5, 7 years, sometimes longer, and I don't really know where I go. And I want to help people understand that there is a possibility for you to exit your business in lots of different ways and shift your focus from how do I get the next round of income in to what am I building? What assets am I building inside my business that can eventually make my business more valuable or give me something that I can eventually sell?
Yes. And offline, we were talking about it just recently. I've talked with two different people who just shut their businesses down. And I'm like, oh, why didn't you sell it? You could have sold it. No, he's the face of the business. All his clients know who he is. And so because he's retiring, we just shut it down. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so what do you say to somebody like that?
Oh, come back, come back. I think that's the conversation that I've been having a lot with people these days is that they don't realize that there are opportunities for them. I just bought a business 2 years ago that was a personal brand. So there's absolutely, like, there are marketplaces where you can sell pretty much any type of business and there will be people who can buy it. And so, yes, you can absolutely sell a personal brand and there is stuff that you can do. And that is what I'm working with my clients on right now is how do we sort of move to a place where we neutralize the business and neutralize the brand or you do you do some preparation to make sure that all of the stuff you've built inside your business that is associated with a personal brand can eventually be sold or transitioned. So there are lots of different strategies. I don't work with people who are like, oh, I have to sell my business right now. We're looking ahead and we're thinking 3, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road. What do we want to actually do? And let's build the strategy now. By trade, I am a business model designer. I am a business architect, and I do that with the corporate world and I do that with small business owners. And when I look at exits from that perspective, I would rather see someone focusing their efforts on creating assets and creating something that builds wealth and value in their business as opposed to just constantly striving for more and more revenue. So certainly revenue growth and is a strategy to build more value in your business, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that you can do to create a business that is more valuable. So when you come from the perspective of a buyer, then you identify strategies inside your business that would appeal to someone who would buy the business. So that's why we work from like a valuation perspective. Even if you're not going to sell for 10 years, start with a valuation perspective, and that shows you all the places because you do a risk adjusted valuation that shows you all the places that there opportunities for you to improve inside the business in terms of like specifically that valuation focus or where there are opportunities to grow. And then we build out an exit strategy where we identify assets that you could focus on inside the business and build out that you could either sell individually or you could sell as a full package. You can sell the whole entity, or you can take an operational exit, which means, as parents, we're always looking for legacy. We're always looking for what we're going to pass on to our kids, or is that an option for you? Or sometimes you can pass it on to one of your team members, or you can, pass it on to someone who comes in as an operational partner. But there's lots of different ways to take yourself out of the business, give you more rest, give you more, and that's what we do with a number of my clients is they all get to choose their own exit strategy, whether it's an operational exit or a sale or an asset sale, or there's other options as well. So lots of different opportunities. I wish people knew that they existed and that they all have assets inside their business that they've created right now that they don't recognize. I'll send you the link, but there's a little PDF I've got of 9 different types of assets you can build inside your business that you might probably have already. And that's valuable. Those are all valuable to a buyer.
That is so much information. And
I know. Sorry.
No, you're this expert that, I mean, some of the words that you've used, I'm like, okay, wait a second, and that's a lot. So how did you get into this? Because I don't think 90% of business owners probably are aware of some of this stuff. So how did you get into it?
Um, I I have done a lot and been in the sort of startup and entrepreneurial world for basically my entire career. I am a business model designer, and so I always think about how does a business look as a system, right? And how are we tweaking all the different parts of the system? And that changes and that evolves as you go. And just over the years, that's been the place that I've sort of lived, is teaching people how to look at their businesses as a system and, build a business model that really works for them and is aligned to who they are as individuals. And then about 5 years ago, I was sitting in a retreat somewhere, and I was looking at this wall of all of the things that I've done and all of the experience I have. I own 4 different businesses and all this stuff. And I was like, what am I building? Right? I just keep going and getting more clients, but what am I actually building? I lost my house in my divorce, but I can't get back into the real estate market here. Probably not, because it's astronomical. So what else could I bring into my life that would be an asset like real estate would be? And I started to think, I really want to build businesses. I mean, that's my core skill set. And I've been around the block. I have done every single different type of thing inside of a business. I've been a student of business. I have a master's degree in basically entrepreneurship. And so how can I actually turn that into something? And I started to think there was this program that we were in, which teaches people how to buy these little websites. Like, there's some guy over in, wherever it is in the world that has a different economy than we do. And he creates a little site that gets some traction and traffic on a certain domain, and then he sells it for $500, and someone buys it for $500 and then develops that out and then sells it for 6,000, and someone buys that and, develops it out. And so everybody has these different skill sets in the lifespan of a business. So it got me thinking, and I was thinking, all of my clients, all the people that I work with, they've all got sellable businesses. Now, whether you're going to sell it for $500 or 500,000 or 500 million, that's the question, is how do we take that business as an asset and build the value? And so this started eating my brain, and I was like, I need to buy, sell, renovate businesses. That needs to be my business model. But how can I teach other people to do the same thing and give them this new perspective on their business where it's not just focused on making income?
That's
And it was
amazing.
born.
That's great. And I think that that's part of how you get into business as well, is you look for what people need and how do you, here's a problem, and you create a solution and you get into it. And I really do think that as women, especially because that's who this audience is, that we start this business thinking it might be a side hustle, or it's a hobby, or it's my livelihood. I've got to make this work. But then you might get tired, or you might need to move on to something else, or for whatever reason. And I know a lot of people that they just shut things down. And so um, when somebody contacts you, what are some of the steps, or how long does it take to work with you to get through to where they are prepared and they've set up their business so that they could sell in a couple years?
Well, I mean, that's a moving target, right? So the first thing that we would do is do an asset inventory, and we would take a look at the business model and the alignment of the business model and figure out what they're shooting for, right? Is it 5 years and you want to exit and you want to make $1 million? Is it 3 years and you want to triple the valuation of your business? Is it 7 years and you just want to take yourself out? Those are all different strategies. And so based on what you're aiming for, your current situation, your assets that you've built right now, and who you are as a business owner. Like, listen, I could recommend a whole bunch of different strategies, but I have clients who are like, I don't want to do that. That's not in alignment with, like, I hate this. So we're not going to bring that into your business model. So there's lots and lots of different things you can do to grow. And there's lots of, and that's what it comes down to, is growth in assets. And so we build a roadmap for them and we build a strategy for them. And then with my higher level clients, what I will do is I'll start working with them, and we do a 12-month work together. And my little superpower is that I can see the strategy and I can build the strategy, but I can also see how to execute that. So I'll work with them on being sort of their shadow CEO and work on the execution part and manage their team and take them out of all the stuff that doesn't really like light them up and doesn't allow them to step into growth. And they just sort of skyrocket. So depending on what your strategy is and what you're trying to achieve, that could be multi-year. It could be a couple of years. I don't typically like to get into the situations where it's like there's some urgency and I have to sell tomorrow, that kind of thing. I can help you with that. But once they get to the point where they're going to sell, then I'll work with them on preparing for that sale and putting together the offer letter and putting together and helping them with the negotiation. And then most importantly is we have to work on your post-exit strategy. So what are you going to do after you exit? Because a lot of people will exit and then they're just like, oh, my whole life has changed, right? So we do a lot of that work too. So there's that whole continuum. But even if you are in a business and you're like, what, I'm really happy with my little lifestyle business and that's okay, but I do want to shift my focus. And I have a whole group of people who are like this, where they know that they're never going to build some empire, but they don't care so much to grow astronomically, but they have shifted their thinking now. So all of the strategies that they're investing in and that they're putting their time and energy into are in the service of creating more value inside their business, creating those assets, shifting their thinking, from services to productized services, or from, a more leveraged business model, or maybe they're going to create some products or whatever. Everybody's a little bit different, but all along the spectrum, even new startups should be thinking this way and thinking in terms of assets as opposed to income. And that gives you a much more viable and a more spacious business.
I like that. Let's bring the mom topic into this. How does this affect moms specifically when they're getting ready, when they're building their business and they're getting ready to sell? Like, how do they create legacy, or if they wanted to leave it with their kids, or because some children have no interest in what their parents do and other people do. And so do you work with people to kind of say, hey, look, I would love my kids, even though they're not highly involved in this, I want this to continue on as a legacy? Or do you see that a lot?
Yeah, of course. And a lot of my clients are parents and they have families, and a lot of them want the space, right? They want the space, and they also really like the idea of creating something that maybe provides an opportunity for their kids to eventually work inside the business, but also that it might just be like a financial legacy where if they are going to exit and they're going to sell something, they get a little pot of money that can now be legacy for their kids or be an asset for their kids down the road. So there's lots of different, like, again, it really comes down to everybody's personal circumstances, but whether you're looking for spaciousness, whether you're looking for something that gives you a little bit less like anxious urgency, or whether you're looking for something where you want to bring your family in, or whether you're looking for something that a little nest egg for your kids, I think thinking in terms of an exit and being very intentional about what you're building, like that's really that shift is that into that intentional momentum, as opposed to just, it feels very unintentional for a lot of people when they're just sort of chasing income, right?
So I think that I'm probably shooting myself in the foot on this one, because you're probably going to say it because this is what we've been talking about. But knowing that you've seen from beginning to end of a business, like that whole business life cycle, what is one piece of advice that you would give business owners that you wish you would have known when you start a business that you know now?
Like, it's never too early at all to start thinking about your business as something bigger than what you are probably thinking about it as right now. There is no like too early time for that, because it just shifts your mindset and it shifts your focus. When I have these conversations about this topic with all of these business owners, their mind just blows, because they so appreciate the shift, right? They so appreciate being able to think that everything that they've built is worth something. So I would say that's the advice, is it's never too early to start learning. And I have a whole like exit journey roadmap, which goes from like the very first inception of your business. What are the things you can do then that make sense? You're not going to build an exit strategy then, but you are going to think about what is the longer term plan and what do you want to build. And that will give you a much earlier perspective on on your direction rather than sort of floundering around and trying things, which you're going to do a little bit of anyway at the very beginning. But in each of those phases of the life cycle of your business, there are different things that you can focus on to get you to that longer term vision.
That's great. Okay, so now let's switch gears as a mom, because we were talking before at our age and some of the changes in our body and what's happening. And so we've seen the gamut. We have children that are a little older. Yours are a little younger than mine. But I want you to think back of the time where you're just sitting on a park bench watching your children. And now you have wisdom because you've seen your clients have children who, you've seen it all and you've seen what's happened. And I want you to think about as this 9-month pregnant woman comes and sits next to you and she starts talking to you. And you just like, she's a mom, she's excited, she has all this stuff. And you see, because you have wisdom from seeing your own children as well as your clients and kind of the circle of life, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What is one piece of advice that you would give that mom if it could be anything about motherhood?
Protect your time, right? I started my first real business a month before I gave birth to my daughter. So don't recommend that. Like I gave birth to my son after, 2 years later in the hospital, and I was working in the hospital. Like I got myself into a position where there wasn't an option for me not to work. I was the sole breadwinner, and I was, just running myself ragged in about 12 different directions. And I lost my childhood with my kids. I will never get that back. So I would say protect your time and stay away from all of the self-judgment and all of the places where you're going to be bombarded with all the things that you should do. You've got to design that lifestyle. You've got to design that your work life around what's critically important to you at this particular phase in your life. And as a mom, that's oftentimes like the time and the attention that I get with my kids. And that just you don't get that back, right? So I would say protect your time and make that your most valuable asset and figure out how you can build your life around that and your work life.
That is phenomenal advice because I too was the breadwinner for the first 4 children, and it was hard. Luckily, I got out when my youngest was 3, and so he knows a different mom than my first 2. And I feel bad because that time, like they've had to learn to rely on themselves. And I remember my number 3, like from the time she was in 6th grade, she packed her own lunch. She got herself up because I wasn't able to do those things. And so she's very self-reliant, which is great for her. But it's taken some time to try to build a relationship because she couldn't rely on mom. And that was heartbreaking. So I think that that's great advice.
Yeah, my kids had their dad, like he was a stay-at-home dad, and so they always had him around, but it was at the risk of my relationship with them. And I was away all the time and I was working all the time and I had to, and we live like a good distance away from the city, and so it's an hour in, an hour out. And so I just spent all my time in a car. I didn't know who my kids' teachers were. I didn't know who their friends were and all of that sort of thing. And that just really killed me in it. Really building my relationship with them now, and that's a lot easier to do as an adult and as they get older. But yeah, there was a definitely deficit back in that time. But my kids were also grew up to be quite independent, and I wanted them to be able to make their own lunches. But yeah, like that, just that element of caring and that element of being around. I remember my son, I think he was like 6 or something, and they asked him to make a little Mother's Day book or something and with little drawings in it. And one of the things they had to fill out was, my mom really likes to. And his answer was, work on your computer and drink wine.
That's, yeah, I
Proud
know.
moment, right? Like, he saw me just working all the time and he thought that's what I like to do. And that felt kind of crummy for sure. But also I've been able to model for my kids that you can be independent, you can build for yourself. My daughter's built her own little business here, and she's making way more money doing it than she would working at the grocery store or whatever. And so she just had the permission, and she knew that that she could. So in a way, I kind of like that. But yeah, I would love to get that time back that I had the
But I think
opportunity to
you do the best with what you have at the time,
do.
right? And
Of course.
so, and it is opening, but your son, you got several years left with him to be able to build that. And so, I mean, kids, do they remember everything from a childhood now? Teenage, that's a little different, but as time goes, they kind of forget that too. And the times that you are there, those important times and the dates. And I think I'm speaking more to the moms listening right now, but if you're in a position, because I was there too, I was the breadwinner. My husband stayed home, but he wasn't really there. So my kids, I would hear from the neighbors, oh, do you know what your son was doing today? And oh, did you know this or that? And I'm like, wow, this is not, hey, how are you? I don't need this right when I say hi to you. And so there was a lot of guilt, but at the same time, you're doing the best you can with what you have and call on your army of helpers and people and make time, like go on dates with your kids because they're going to remember those times that, and that's how you're going to build a relationship if you can't be home.
Yeah, I think now it's been really interesting to see the relationship develop because my kids are both teenagers. My daughter's turning 17 shortly, and my son is 14, turning 15.
Mhm.
And the amount of engagement and one of the things that I've really sort of noticed, especially with him now, is that I need to know him. And
Yeah,
that's a huge value that I have that I feel like I haven't given him. And that's been like the focus now is to know him as an individual and know him as a like a grown up almost because he needs to feel very, very much like he matters, right? And so it's been a very different exercise now to engage and attach to your kids as they get older than it was when they were toddlers.
it is so true. I had that conversation with my son yesterday because he's getting ready to leave for 2 years where I get to talk to him once a week, right? And I said, son, like, I want that time with you because he's not going to come back, nor should he after he leaves. And he's 19, so he'll be what, almost 22 by the time he gets back. And it's like, I need a relationship with you where I want you need to be able to feel like you can come to me with things. And he's one of those, granted, he's special needs. And so he doesn't always comprehend things, but he's just used to doing things on his own because he thinks he has to. And I'm like, I'm here. I'm here. Like, ask me questions. Ask me if you don't know how to do something. I'm happy to help. And so for him, it's like trying to build a relationship. And it is hard. It's hard sometimes when, like I told you, the first two were super, they were twins. They were super needy. And then there's these two, and then I had these two at the end, and they were obviously babies. They couldn't take care of themselves at all. So these two right here, they got sandwiched and they learned to rely on themselves. And because the twins took a lot of time, and then we had babies. And so when they moved out, it's like, okay, hello, we're here, but they're like, yeah, we're used to being on our own. And that was hard. It's
And I
taken.
think that's an important thing to also distinguish is that your two kids are gonna your three kids, your five kids, whatever you have, like they're each gonna have a different experience. And when we constantly try to paint the experience that our second or our third or whatever has with the first, like that was the expectation, we always end up in this place where we feel like we haven't done our jobs, right? And I look at my son now and when I've taken this perspective of like, I need to know you as an individual and I need to know you like he's got some neurodivergence and we're trying to figure that out right now. And he needs different types of support than my daughter did. And when you start to get to know them as little individuals, all those things start to become very clear. But it means we have to invest the time. And, I work full time on 4 different businesses. And we've taken him out of school because he's got some challenges. And that means, every week I have to sit down and also school him and because I seem to be the only person who can help him actually learn and make progress. And it means our relationship has changed. And I really like it. But our relationship has now been built on vulnerability. And when I recognized that he doesn't have the ability to regulate himself, I knew that that's the role I had to play. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't sort of been aware and been observant and started to look at this challenge that we were having and really try to take it apart from a different perspective, because it was this like cycle of behavioral stuff, and then the repercussions of that, and then the behavioral stuff and the repercussions of that. And I was looking at him going, what's going on? Like, I can't, this isn't a matter of just like discipline, right? And that's what a lot of sort of traditional parents would judge on, and would tell you, oh, you have to discipline your kid. That doesn't work for him. He's got PDA, he's got ADHD, he's got like a very unique brain, and nobody was seeing it. Everybody was just labeling him as this behavioral kid. And what I started to realize is this is all his reaction to anxiety. He would be resistant and he would shut down when he got anxious about something, or he felt like he couldn't perform. And so we need to not only be business owners, we also need to make time and space and like have the attention span to be able to identify these things in our kids, because sometimes we're the only ones that can. So this is why I keep coming back to like, give yourself, protect your time, and protect it in a way that gives you flexibility to be able to slot in a 2-hour working session with your kid on his homework, because that's what he needs, right? The job never ends, right?
No, I literally had a breakdown with the school nurse yesterday. I didn't even mean to. Like, that's how embarrassing it was, because I've had 2 kids who have had surgery. One had his wisdom teeth removed. Then I have another child who, like, the flu. We dealt with that whole thing. And then yesterday I got to find out, which I'm going to get emotional again, that we get to start chemo drugs on my daughter, that she's 9, right? Like, she's 9. And so sure, it's not, she doesn't have cancer, but she has some things that require that medication. And so I like totally broke down at the school nurse, and I'm like, I am sorry. But it was a combination of like all of my kids. When someone said, Charisse, golly, you've been going through this for 2 years. I'm like, well, that's what happens when you have so many kids, because they all have issues at different times. And I can't imagine my life. There's no way I could do what I want to do and be the mom that I am today if I were still working my 9 to 5 job, like running colleges. I had to
Yeah.
quit because of that. And honestly, that's why I did, was because my kids needed me. And so that's, I think, why for me, this journey is so important, to help other women, that we all struggle as moms, and there are different ways. And if you have this passion or you feel this purpose, and figure it out, and like that way you can be the mom that you want to be. So I appreciate you being so vulnerable.
Yeah, I can say the one thing that has drastically improved my life is the willingness to be vulnerable and to be able to look at yourself in a really, really critical way. Not critical in the sense of being, mean to yourself, but just being open about understanding yourself and being willing to be vulnerable. And it's changed all my relationships. And I was definitely not a person who liked vulnerability. That sounded awful to me, because I've had to be very protective of myself. And once I started to learn to do that, it feels very uncomfortable, especially when you're being vulnerable with your kid. We had a car ride down to the city a few weeks ago. And when I started to really figure out what was going on with him, I apologized to him. And I said, I don't like how I treated you when you were a kid, because I saw you as this behavioral issue, as this stubbornness, as this. But what I realized now is that the way your brain works, this was you reacting to anxiety. This was you reacting to performance anxiety. This was you reacting to something that made you really uncomfortable. And I'm so sorry that I didn't see that back then. And everything changed in our relationship after that. He started to agree to go and get treatment, and started to agree to go get assessments when I couldn't get him to before. And that's going to open all sorts of doors for him, because I feel like I know what he needs now. So that vulnerability and being able to sit in front of your kid and say, I really screwed up here, has completely changed my relationship with him. So vulnerability is hard. It is so hard, and it's hard to your peers. It's especially hard in the mom community, because there's so much judgment. I think moms judge other moms worse than anyone else does. But I find that the more vulnerable we are, the more that we open ourselves up and share, the more support that we get, and the deeper the relationships that we create.
Nope, totally agree. That's a whole nother episode we could go on to.
I think so.
It's true. Life is just hard, and our children go in life in stages. And I think, with my son, same thing. When he was younger, wow, he was tough, but he's this great kid. And for some reason, I really do believe we're sent Like our children come to us for because we're the best for them for this earth. And I look and I can understand how my son thinks. And my husband sometimes gets frustrated. He's like, I don't care, he needs to. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, no, but you have to understand this is how he's thinking, this is how he's feeling. And so this is his perception, this is his reaction. And um, it's hard, I think, sometimes, but it is so worth it. Like I look at my oldest now, one of the twins, that he still chooses his own path that I don't agree with all the time, but he's happy. And as a mom, that's what matters.
Totally. I used to think that I would be so, when I grew up, it was, all about academics and that's all that mattered. And everything else kind of went by the wayside. And I thought, oh gosh, what if my kids don't get good grades? And now that I understand the system better and now that I understand them better, I'm like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah,
try as hard as you can, learn something, do your best. But the last thing I care about right now is their grades. Like there's so much I want them to do well, and I know what the opportunity is going to be for them once, but I also know that having built businesses all my life and I know what it looks like out in the real world. My daughter's built this business for herself and she's extremely talented at what she does. And she just kind of did it. And now she's going to have the opportunity to keep making money. She's got people coming from all over the place to come and work with her and get her services. And so she's building a brand. She's learning all this stuff. So I just know that there are so many more options out there for them and that academia isn't necessarily meant for everyone. And it's not a badge of honor. It is not, doesn't mean a whole lot if I came away with, first class honors on my grades. I'm much more interested in you being fulfilled and you finding a path that actually really resonates with you and makes you feel really good.
that is so true. And I used to be this university snob, right? Because I graduated from a university and I had to. And then I started teaching preparatory college. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my kids would be like, they'd excel in this way more than this. And I realized that there's something for everyone. And like you said, it's not all about the grades. And I used to think like 100% attendance at school, I can't miss school. And then I travel a lot and I like to bring my kids with me because they get to go see, like we just went to Boston or we just went to Oregon. And so it's like they can see history in reality, not just from a book that quite frankly is wrong. So it's much more, yeah, they missed a week of school. Oh, well.
COVID really changed their perspective on attendance too. Like once they realized that they could do all of their schoolwork
One
and
thing.
not have to go to school, now they just look at attendance, they're like, meh, whatever, right? Like even my son, it's really hard to get him to do his schoolwork because he doesn't see the point. He's very intelligent and he can get through it all, but he's just kind of like nonplussed about all of it. And he says, even if I don't do it, I'll still get put through to the next grade. And I'm like, I can't argue with that because it's true. We've just become the lowest common denominator, and there's nobody paying attention to the kids that think differently or that need different support. And he's sort of stuck in this weird vortex of people who don't have the resources to help him and he's not bad enough that he needs some alternate program or whatever. So anyway, it's like really opened up my mind about I've got 3 degrees, I did all my education, whatever, but not everybody has to do that. And it also doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be successful in your career. Like I've hired people who don't have any sort of university degree that are incredibly good at what they do. So they make a lot of money. So I think there's lots of options out there for people. And the academic snobbery was just something we grew up with in our generation, and that's really shifted for me, and that's really changed. I still want my kids to do the best that they can and develop that habit. But I think there's a lot of different ways that you can be successful in your life.
Well, and I think it's different too, because again, I do real estate as well. And I have a client that just closed on a home. He's $200,000 in debt and he's making $40,000 a year. Like, how are you ever gonna pay that off? Right. And I just think that the sun's shining. I just think that that's just a huge disservice. And yeah, he's doing what he loves, but what kind of financial hardship are you going to have for your whole life because of that? And so you're right, it's not for everybody. And I do agree with your son. I have a friend, my daughter's friend, who has a sister who she acts like she's 4, she's 7. They've held her back actually, but she can't read. She's in first grade and she can't read. So when she comes over to the house, I'm like, okay, you guys, we're going to teach her a word today. So it is a different, situation than what we grew up with, I think.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. And I actually am not unhappy about that. Like, I do think that institutions like education have to evolve. And my kids know so much more about the world than we ever did because they've got access to social media, they've got access to TikTok. My daughter, when she was, of that age, she was starting to get her period. And I was like, okay, I have to tell you how. She's like, no, I already know how all this works. There's a lady on TikTok who has a TikTok channel that is
Mhm.
just for prepubescent girls, teaching them all about their bodies. And I'm like, wow, I actually didn't know how you get pregnant until I was trying to get pregnant. I don't mean like the act,
Right.
but
Right.
like I thought you could get pregnant any time of the month. Seriously, I never had the education to somehow like maybe I just didn't get it, but whatever. But she knows everything I talk to her about or I try to teach her. She's like, yeah, yeah, I know. Well, they have access. Like, so what does education now look like, right? What are we trying to educate our kids on? And what does an educate? I think it needs to be preparing them for, you know, being being custodians of their own lives and figuring out what that means for them and that they have all these different options. And it doesn't mean I just go to university, I get a degree, and then I go and get a good job in the government. No, my kids would hate that, right? They would absolutely, because they've been grown up, both their dad and I are entrepreneurs and work independently and that sort of thing. So that's their expectation and that's what they've come to know. So everybody's got a different path and the experiences that I can give them are so much more important than get my son through social studies. And I was like, okay, what do you want to learn next? Do you want to learn about colonialism? Do you want to learn about geography? He's like, who cares? He's like, none of that matters to me. I don't care. And I'm like, all right, okay, I can't answer that question for you why you should care. Right? So we'll focus on the things that I can actually get you to do.
Or math. Like my son can do it in his head. 100% on every single test. He can do the problem literally in his head and he's right every time. But he failed math because he wouldn't do the homework. It would literally take, if there were 18 questions, it would take 18 hours. And I'm not over exaggerating, multiple times. And so I'm like, you cannot, this is killing him and it's killing me and it's affecting my entire family because I'm sitting here with him like for a week at a time. I said, there's got to be a different way. Nope, he has to turn in his homework. I'm like, no, that's not, you're not serving people. But my daughter, his sister or twin, that she had to do every single problem and she still didn't understand it. So I really do think there's something for different people. And again, get me on a soapbox, but we won't, because I think that you are advocating for your son. I think it's fantastic, and I congratulate you for that because he is going to have much better experience than he would have going through traditional school, I'm sure.
We'll see. We'll see. He wants to go to the high school next year when he is in the high school and it's right, underneath my place. So maybe he'll come and stay here. He lives with his dad full time and that's fine. We have a very good relationship and we are at each other's houses all the time and what have you. His dad's going through chemo right now. And so it's been that's been another element. And that's what you have to constantly be aware of is like watch for these kids and how that's affecting them and what it means to them because they're all very pragmatic and they sort of respond how we respond. And so if we just stay kind of neutral and like, what's the next fact? What's the next fact? What's the next fact? They tend to sort of follow that too. So there's a lot of balls to keep in the air. There's a lot of awareness that we need to remain conscious of, and it's always changing. So we'll see what happens with him. But I feel like there's this balancing act of becoming too overly concerned about it and trying to really structure the whole scenario, but also just giving him room to be like, you know what, figure yourself out. And for him, it's very much about him making the choices. He's got PDA. It has to be his idea. And then he'll get behind it, but for like a 12 minutes and then it'll be something else. But he's also very good at math. And so he has a math tutor and he works with his tutor on math and that seems to come pretty naturally for him. So I don't know, we'll find his way. He liked history, but he's very uninclined to go and, do anything more than what he absolutely needs to do. So
So,
ask me next year. We'll see.
yeah. So what is PDA? Because I just know public display of affection. So what is PDA?
Oh, no, that's not at all it. pathological demand avoidance. And so in the UK, it's considered as part of the spectrum. I sort of think in a few years, my partner said this to me, that we're all going to be figure out that we're all somewhere on the spectrum. But in the UK, it's considered part of the autism spectrum. But basically, it shows up as extreme resistance always to everything, to a point where it's not normal, right? Like and what it is it's a safety thing for him. So when he is confronted with something that causes him anxiety, or that he doesn't know the answer to, or that he is it feels like not right in his body, he will resist. And so he has no logical reason to, but like just things that are just don't even make sense. My husband texted me the other day, and he says Hayden's punching holes in the wall and screaming in his room. And I called him and I was like, what's going on? And he showed me his hand. It was all bleeding. And I said, what happened? Like, what set you off? And he said, well, my teacher sent me an email and asked if I wanted to meet on a weekly basis if I had any questions or anything like that. I said, that's a really big reaction to something very mundane. And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, what was that about? And he says, I don't know. He goes, you know as much as I do. So that sort of triggered me to really realize like there's something else going on in his brain. And so this, like anything that feels like a demand, anything that feels like he's being put in a position where he has to make a decision, or he gets completely bowled over by anxiety. And I think it's also about performance. So when he feels like he has to do something right, or he has to perform in some way, he'll just shut down. So the way that you have to deal with that is changing your language, being conscious of it and being aware of it. I've told him about it, and he says he seems to think that that feels right. And yeah, and so just helping him manage the anxiety. He also has very, very little ability to regulate himself physically. And so he will just spin up into these like almost a rage and almost like psychosis, because he just can't regulate. And so you have to sit with him and hold his hand. You have to be this calm presence for him, because he can't do it for himself. He has executive functioning disorder. He's very intelligent. He is very funny and very charming, but extremely shy around people he doesn't know. But get him in front of other people, he's an actor, right? He's a performer. He's very, very engaging. So he's this little like enigma, right? And he's got all these different layers to him, but I don't feel like anyone has been able to help him. And I think he's been let down a lot by, including myself, right? Before I understood him. So he's really like turned into this, he's really shut down, right? He's funny and he's engaging and he's like happy-go-lucky and he's a good kid, but he's also very shut down. So we're trying to unravel all of that stuff and get him assessed. And he's already been assessed with ADHD, which was a no-brainer to me, like if you knew him. So all these layers, right? Yeah. So we'll figure it out. But learning about PDA, it was a friend of mine who works in the school system and works with like autistic kids and has all the training and what have you. And she kind of put it on the table. And so I think you may want to look into that. And it really resonated with me.
Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure someone else is going through it. Sounds kind of like my oldest son, which I wish I would have known that. He had probably part of that, but yeah, it was tough. So it's hard, but you're advocating for him, and congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, trying for sure. We never have the answers, do we?
And they're never cookie cutter. You wish they could be, but they're not. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
If somebody wanted to find you, how would they do that?
Best place to find me is at my website, stephaniehayes.biz. And I'm also mostly active on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And moms, I hope that you were able to listen to this and realize that we are moms too, and we have our struggles, and it's okay. But if you're looking to start your business, or if you're looking to build a business, think about your exit strategy. And that's where Stephanie comes into play. So go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.